All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a huge question, one that goes way back to ancient Greece and gets right to the core of, well, everything, and we have the brilliant mind of Aristotle to thank for it.
So let's just think about this for a second. What kicked everything off? What was that first push, the spark that set the entire universe in motion? This wasn't just some casual question for the ancient Greeks. For a guy like Aristotle, this was the fundamental puzzle. It was a problem about reality itself, and he was convinced it had to have a logical answer.
So where do you even start with a question that big? Well, Aristotle did what he did best. He just looked around, and what he saw was everything is changing all the time. The world is in this constant state of flux, right? Nothing ever just sits still. This constant change, he called it motion, and it was everywhere.
Okay, and this is where it gets really cool. To understand all this change, Aristotle came up with these two amazing concepts, potentiality and actuality. Potentiality is basically what something could be, and actuality is what it is right now. The classic example is an acorn, right? That acorn has the potential to become a massive oak tree. And the oak tree? That's the actualized form of the acorn. Super simple idea on the surface, but trust me, it is absolutely profound. It's the key to his entire argument.
So, based on that, he laid down a fundamental rule. You could almost think of it as a law of the cosmos. It's this: nothing just starts moving or changing all by itself. For anything to go from its potential state to its actual state, something else has to give it a nudge. Something has to cause that change.
Okay, but wait, if you follow that logic, you run into a huge problem. I mean, a massive one. If object A is moved by mover B, and B is moved by C, and C is moved by D, well, where does it end? Does it just go on forever? This idea of an infinite chain, what philosophers call an infinite regress, was a total non-starter for Aristotle. It was just illogical. It didn't compute. It's like a line of dominoes. You can't have a line that stretches back into infinity. There has to be a first domino that got knocked over.
And that logical dead end is what forces his hand. It leads into this really elegant solution. If that chain of movers can't go on forever, then it's simple. It has to have a beginning. There must be some first source of motion that kicked off the whole cosmic chain reaction.
And he gave it a name, the prime mover, or sometimes the unmoved mover. The whole idea is that this is the ultimate original source of all movement in the universe. But, and you got to get this part, it's the most important bit, it is itself unmoved. It's the thing that moves everything else, but nothing moves it. It's the final stop. The buck stops here. It's the ultimate answer to that endless what moved what game.
But hold on, that probably raises a big question for you, right? If it's unmoved, how does it move anything? It's not pushing or pulling, it's not bumping into things, so how on earth can it be the cause of all motion? This is where Aristotle's thinking gets really creative and, frankly, just beautiful.
So he says the prime mover doesn't work like a normal cause, what he'd call an efficient cause. That's like, a pool cue hitting a ball, a physical push. No, he said the prime mover works as a final cause, which is a completely different idea. It's more like a purpose, a goal, or an object of desire.
And the way he explained this is just perfect. Imagine a cat and a saucer of milk. Now, the milk isn't doing anything, is it? It's just sitting there. It's not jumping up and pulling the cat over. But the very fact that it exists and the cat wants it causes the cat to move toward it. The milk is the cause of the cat's motion, but the milk itself is completely unmoved and unchanged. See how that works?
Okay, so scale that idea up to the entire cosmos. In the exact same way, the whole universe is drawn toward the prime mover because of its perfection. Everything in existence is striving to imitate it, to be more like it. This, for Aristotle, was the explanation for why the planets and stars move in these perfect, beautiful circles. It was their way of emulating the unchanging perfection of their ultimate object of desire.
All right, so if this thing just sits there, being perfect, and that's enough to move the whole universe, what is it? What is this thing actually like? And yet, this is where it gets a little mind-bending. Okay, a few key things. First, it has to be what he called pure actuality. That means it has absolutely zero potential to change or be anything else. It just is. And because of that, it can't be made of physical stuff, right? It has to be immaterial, because physical matter can always change. It also has to be eternal. No beginning, no end, totally outside of time. And of course, unmoved. We've covered that one. And when you put all that together, you get the ultimate definition of good. It is perfection itself, the very thing everything else is striving for. So, you might be thinking, this sounds a lot like God. And you're not wrong. Aristotle himself used the word God to describe the prime mover.
But, and this is a really big but, we have to be careful. Is he talking about God in the way most people think about God today? The answer is, not really. Not at all, actually.
Yeah, when you put them side by side, the differences are huge. The prime mover is totally impersonal. It's an abstract principle. In contrast, the God in, say, the Abrahamic religions is deeply personal, relational. Aristotle's God knows only itself. It is completely unaware of you, me, or the universe. That's a far cry from an all-knowing, omniscient God who intervenes in the world. The prime mover is just uninvolved. It's an object of striving for us, but it has no idea we exist. It doesn't have a plan. It doesn't care. It's a pretty stark difference.
Which brings up one last really fascinating puzzle. Okay, so if you're a perfect, unchanging being, and you're completely disconnected from the world, what do you do all day? I mean, what does a being like that spend eternity doing?
Well, its one and only activity is thought. Pure, perfect thought. But then you have to ask, what does a perfect being think about? It can't think about the world, or us, or anything imperfect, because that would sort of contaminate its own perfection. So what's the only subject worthy of a perfect mind? Perfection itself. The prime mover's one and only activity for all of eternity is thinking about thinking. Noesis noesos. Mind-blowing, right?
And as out there as that sounds, you can't overstate how influential this whole idea was. This concept of a necessary unmoved mover. It became a massive cornerstone for Western philosophy and theology for literally thousands of years. Thinkers like Thomas Aquinas later picked it up and adopted it to make arguments for the existence of God in a Christian context. It had a huge legacy.
So that's what we'll leave you with to chew on. Which idea is more compelling to you? A universe created by a divine architect with a grand plan for all of us, or a universe that's not created, but is just eternally, constantly striving towards some distant, impersonal, perfect ideal? It's a huge question, and it gets right to the heart of Aristotle's absolutely magnificent vision of the cosmos.